Welcome to The Culture Docent with Dr. Carr, where real stories spark real change. Together, we'll break down culture, leadership, and inclusion and rebuild them into something transformative. This is where conversations become movements. This is The Culture Docent.
This is Dr. Carr, the Culture Docent, here to help you navigate and curate the experiences you want to have. Today's episode is aptly titled, "It's Okay to Leave Money on the Table," because we're talking about those times in life, where we've had to walk from potentially more lucrative opportunities in order to really walk in our purpose. And I am joined by Al Moore, a financial advisor and owner of Al Moore Financial. Al, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Carr, so much for having me. My name's Al Moore. I'm the owner advisor for Al Moore Financial. I've had my own firm since 2022. I'm a country boy from North Little Rock, Arkansas, and it was not my plan at all to get into financial services. A turn of events kind of led me here. I was initially planning to go to school to be an attorney, and my mother passed, and my family had never really dealt with a financial advisor or things of that nature. So we were kind of left with some of her insurance money and not really knowing like what to do with it or how, we should strategize with it. So that kind of led me down the path and talking to some people about what this process is like. And as I journeyed down that path, I saw that there weren't a lot of people who looked like me that I had access to kind of answer those questions. So that made me even more curious. So I started just literally in banking, working at a bank, and worked my way up to an assistant manager, bank branch, and from there I got licensed to do insurance. And from there I got my securities licenses, which are licenses that you get from FINRA that just license you to be an actual financial advisor, fiduciary. I got my Series 7 and 66. From there I took a position at Bank of America Merrill Lynch Wealth Management, worked there for a couple of years, and then I was offered an opportunity to be the vice president of investments for Regions Bank in Arkansas, Northeast Arkansas. And I took advantage of that with the birth of my first child is kind of what prompted me into going to my own practice. And that was been in 2022, and I've been just growing and going ever since.
Awesome. Yes. So I also wanted to be an attorney. So people that know
I
me
could,
or have heard me speak have mentioned they know that before I tell that story. And I actually didn't get into law school, which was kind of a crazy thing because I had wanted to be an attorney since I was 10 years old, and then I didn't get accepted to law school. And I graduated from undergrad during the recession. So in 2009, but it was like
right.
the 2008 time. And so that was just a really crazy time where I had to figure out what I wanted to do. And I
Yeah.
actually ended up, not becoming an attorney. And I feel like that was just like a really great segue, actually, that connection into what we're talking about today, because there were reasons why I decided, not to continue down that path. Because I feel in life, we're going to all receive, these opportunities, hopefully to like follow our curiosities, discover our passions, become more aligned with our purpose. If y'all listen to the previous episode with Globy about, passion and legacy and how those things can coexist. And if you didn't, make sure that you check that out after you listen to us. But, there's beauty in finding alignment. There's beauty in, finding your purpose and those passions and being able to walk in that purpose. But sometimes that means like walking away from what's comfortable. You might have to walk away from positions that are more about, they pay more, but they cause burnout. They might not allow that work-life harmony. They're no longer interesting, or they never were, right? Like you were doing something, you're like, oh, I'm going to get into cybersecurity, but really your heart is in art, right? Like, but you're just going for it because it makes
All right.
money for you and it makes the most sense. And so like we all have those times, but there's times where it's just true misalignment, and it can feel like irresponsible, right? It could feel irresponsible to walk away because, your personal financial situation, you're like, well, I have bills to pay or I have family to take care of, right? Or you may feel like pressure from family and friends to stay, right? And like just kind of agonize over it. I know I also when I walked away from the government, right? I had worked for the government for about 10 years. And that was really what I knew, and, I had this plan for my life and how I saw it, and I wanted to stay in the government, but I didn't wanna do necessarily the specific work that I was doing, and I didn't have the flexibility that I
Mhm.
wanted. Like, I wanted to telework. So and the agency that I work for didn't allow
Yeah.
that, and so I was just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna find another government job," but I had also, unfortunately, I had worked through and spent time in the government during the longest government shutdown in history. And so that the job
Oh,
security that
wow.
I knew of, you got that good government job, right? No, that security was
Right.
not
Yeah.
there. It wasn't there
Mhm.
anymore. It wasn't the same as what we knew beforehand. And so all of that had changed. And I felt like, well, what better time than now to make that leap
Yeah.
because it's not the same. And so I don't and but
Not at all.
my parents were like, "Are you sure you want to leave the government?" My sister was like,
Yeah. You know
"Oh,
that
if
government
you
job, those benefits.
the benefits, baby." I was like, "Nah, I don't want to leave necessarily, but I also know that I want something different. I know that I want flexibility. I know that I want to do a certain type of work." I was very fortunate to be able to obtain my second master's while I was working in the government, and that was paid for. So those benefits that we talk about, right? But it still wasn't, I wasn't having the opportunity to do what I wanted to do. And so when I think about, the purpose, walking in our purpose and trying to find those opportunities to really be able to say, like, I'm finally doing something that aligns with my goals. And it doesn't have to be, like you can turn down things for a variety of reasons. It doesn't have to be because you no
Absolutely.
longer feel secure in that role. It could just be like, this role isn't getting me closer to starting my own HVAC company, right? Or I want to work more I want to own a meal delivery service, but all the jobs that are getting offered to me are in astronautics because that's my background, right? Like the job offers are going to come because they're aligned with what's on your resume. And so you have to make those pivots. You have to be the owner and the arbiter of how you're going to really walk in your purpose and like figuring out what that is. And so that's why I'm excited to talk to you today because I know, that you've made your own career pivots as you shared with us of like wanting to be something, wanting to be a lawyer and then shifting into finances because of this really big moment in your life and in your family's life, right? And like how that kind of shifted you onto a different trajectory. And continuing to be a leader, I want to know what would you recommend? What is your advice? What would you want to share with all of us out here? How can people prepare to walk in their purpose? And I want you to give it to us with kind of that, you got your background in financial services. Let us know how we can prepare for walking in our purpose. Wait, I can't hear you. No, you got to come a little closer cuz I can't hear you. They'll be able to cut that part out.
Now.
I can hear you now.
Okay. Getting closer to the microphone here. So, no, I was just saying. So, for me, preparing to walk in my purpose or your purpose, there's no one size fits all. But for me, and like I said, I'm a Gemini, so on certain days it looks different. But mostly, to me, I found that it was things that were like reoccurring in my life, and I could not figure out. I was like, what is this? Like, what is this specific thing? Why do I keep seeing this theme like in my life? And that was just the theme of like financial issues, not in just terms of people not having money, but in terms of people having money and not really knowing what to do with it. I saw people who were like cash rich and have just sat on cash for years. I think there's something else that we're supposed to be doing. And for me, it was when I started finding things or aspects of my career that I enjoyed doing or that I was just kind of good at for no reason at all. I was like, why do I good at this? Or why do I enjoy this, strenuous part of this thing that most people do not enjoy?
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, okay, man, like maybe that's a part of this whole, purpose deal. And of course, after some maturity, I was like, oh, okay, that was me finding my purpose. So for me, it was definitely some prayer. I was probably in my 20s because Q came out of school during that 2008 recession. Funny thing, in addition to what my family experienced with my mother, also I was working at a TV station during college. They got bought out. This is like 2007, and I had a 401k, They didn't have much money, and I had probably over $6,000, and I had only been working there like a year or so. But this is 2007. That's a decent amount of money for like a
Yeah.
22-year-old or however I was. And I remember they came to us. They were like, "Hey, our station's getting bought out. Whatever. You have this money that I didn't even really remember." And I was like, they're like, "What do you want to do with it? Do you want to roll it over, or do you want us to cut you a check?" And I didn't know, so I asked my dad, "Hey, Dad, like, what should I do with this?" And he said, "Call your Aunt Pam and ask her what to do." So I called her, and she was like, "Nephew, I want you to get on Google, and I want you to learn how to invest that money. Just that simple." And she literally like set me on a path like almost 20 years ago to like where I am today. Just set up to say all those little things were preparing me for my purpose. I had to like lose a job that I liked at the time. The economy tanked. When those issues in life like started happening, when bad things are happening to you, I'm a spiritual person, so I say God, some people might say the universe or what have you. That's a higher power's way of being like, hey, I'm preparing you for something, and for you to fully appreciate and have the tools, you have to have known what it feels like to navigate all of these obstacles.
Right.
So just prayer, looking back on things, I can't understand like why all these bad things are happening, but like what I learned from it and just like reoccurring themes. So noticing those things is how, I got prepared to walk in my purpose by taking all those things that had happened to me and is like, how can I use this to be of value?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I agree. I think it is very much recognizing, like, okay, yes, this is not ideal, right? This was not an ideal situation for me to be in. I didn't want to lose my job at the radio station. I didn't want to be laid off, right? I don't want to have to leave college, right? Because some people have to do that because they're unable to pay the fees, tuition. It's expensive, right? But recognizing what did I learn in that moment? What kind of skills did I need to tap into to be able to move forward? And that's not to say it's not going to happen again. Unfortunately, we know that things like that are going to happen. Life is not linear in that way,
At all.
but taking what we've learned and saying, okay, I've survived this moment. I've been through this moment. When like when you were told in that moment, like, contact this person, and she's like, okay, look this up. You need to do your research and figure out how to invest, and then that's a spark. So next time something happens, you're like, let me do my research. Let me work with my network. Let me use the resources that I have available to me to be able to then navigate this moment, because I know that I can. Because we can't, I say preparing to walk in your purpose, but like, you can't prepare for everything that's going to happen in life, because we know that that's just not a thing, right? Like, we can do what we can. And I think, you're spot on with saying, like, just being mindful of being observant around the things the tools of you, the resource that you use, because you may have to tap into those things again. And all of it was, for some reason, you may not have known it yet,
Right.
but it was for a reason. That also, I also wanted to ask, what for you has really been the most surprising, in your journey, thing in your journey that you wouldn't have been able to predict when you first decided to, like, leave your employer, now to owning your own, financial services company?
So that's a really good question. And like that could be a whole episode itself. In the interest of time, I'll highlight a couple of things. So the first thing that I learned, because again, you're in Alabama, you've heard of Regions Bank before. You've heard of Bank of America during the recession. Merrill Lynch merged with them to do their wealth management. So I've worked for some pretty big companies. I've held some titles at big companies. I've had a substantial clientele, millions of dollars under management. I was under the impression that those people were doing business with me. And I learned that no, 90% of my clientele, like, they were doing business with Regions and Bank of America. And when I left, they were like, "Hey, we like you, but we're gonna find another advisor
Yeah.
here." And I was like, "Oh, I was preparing. I had saved up a little money. I was like, man, I'll transition my clients over here and be independent, because what you would make independent, you would have to have 4 clients at you know, at a large firm for, just because they take so much because of what they supply. You got a big fancy office, you get a retreat, all this training, use their computers, things like that. What you would have to make, like at Merrill Lynch, what would take me $1 million account independently, I could do that with a $250,000 account, and my compensation would be equal, because
Right.
I've showed all those costs and I get a larger percentage. And so I was kind of looking in my book like, oh man, like this is the perfect time to go. Those people were doing business, particularly, and again, for those who are listening on radio, I'm a black man in the South who's a money manager. So you can imagine that every place that I've worked, when I worked for a company, I was always the only black person. It was a thing where we make up the smallest percentage of wealth advisors in the country. Even other cultures that still have more advisors, even though they have a smaller percentage of the population as far as, for their ethnic group. It's just something that we haven't, gotten into a lot. So a lot of people, I would make
Or haven't
appointments
been
on the
able
phone
to.
and haven't been able to
Yeah.
get into it. I would call and make certain appointments on the phone, and I would get good at noticing. Like, when I show up, they're like, oh, I didn't think you were walking through the door. And we play nice with each other for like 30 minutes and they pretend to ask some questions and and a lot of times it's not even that they're just like, I was just kind of taken aback. I don't know what to think because people naturally, you naturally or your subconscious bias, you tend to be more comfortable when you see something similar to you. And when you don't, you just kind of like, let me get to
Process
personally
it.
notice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was a lot of that. So was a early thing I learned in business. Like, hey, people do business with brands, not people. So I was like, I have to. So, and some people like stuck with me. Like they've been, like my diamond clients. Like, and it's been rough and bumpy during the independent thing, but some of them stayed. A lot of them just because they were like, I'm staying because I appreciate what you're trying to do, and my expectation is that like you'll get it. This will be right over time, and I want to be a part of that. And I like your service that you deliver. And so just learning that, like, okay, like people gonna do business with the brand and those big companies, like you can plug and play advisors over there. People, I'm doing business with this big bank. I like my advisor, but if he leaves, it's still all good. And another thing that I may not necessarily dive too deep into, but so when you're dealing with finances, like that coincides with economics and socioeconomics, and what surprised me is that in terms of my group, my people, I want to be able to help my people socioeconomically. Black Americans are actually, when you look at the data about our average household income, our savings, property ownership, when you really look at those numbers compared to other groups, it's probably much worse than people realize. But on the flip side of that, it's much easier to change than we realize. It's literally like 90% of it is literally just lack of organization in terms of group spending with each other. And there's also other things, but I was like, when I look at advisors from other ethnic groups and the networks that they have within each other, and there's like doctor from India has a advisor from India who also has a CPA who also like has a dentist. It's okay. It's just a means of us prioritizing our group in the same way to be like, hey, and it's also very group wise. Like
Right.
other groups, even financial from they're all vested in the younger people being like, hey, we don't have an engineer. We're going to, as a group, start pouring into your child so they can grow up and be an engineer. It's nearly as much coincidence as I thought as a young black person growing up. They're like, hey, because I know a black doctor here, and they were just like, they worked really hard.
Intentionality behind it.
Yeah, but like other groups, it's like, no, it's planned. So those are two things that surprised me: how intentional the other groups were, and the fact that people do business with brands and not really so much people. So when you're an independent person, merging your brand with who you are is really important.
I think that's definitely spot on because I feel like a lot of people, particularly in times like now, we are experiencing a lot of layoffs. That's actually a very natural point where you'll see like an uptick in more independent consulting or contractors, right? People just venturing out on their own because they're like, oh, I'm going to take my expertise and do something that I know how to do and help develop clients from that. But like you said, sometimes like you cool, but I was just trying to, like you're cool because you're cool, not because I'm cool enough with you to go with you, right? And exit out. So that makes a lot of sense. And just the last thing that I would love to ask you is, how has walking in your purpose really changed you as an individual and made you grow as a leader?
So how it's changed me, it's changed me in ways, and I don't know. I always say that people don't necessarily change, like they mature more into who they
They've
were meant
always
to
been.
be. Yeah. And I think you should constantly be maturing or changing as you gain wisdom. But the way that it changed me is that, one, it's made me a lot more sympathetic. Empathetic, probably more so is the correct word. Again, I've had the pleasure of sitting in meetings where like serious data is talked about, because there are all these. If you want to get the best kind of grasp on like the direction of the world, sit in on like quarterly bank meetings with international banks and see what industries are trending. These financial institutions have to have a grasp on all things, because like that's where their investment is. So they're leading the charge on data when it comes to geopolitics, because they're like, hey, if, X bank has a substantial amount of resources or a substantial amount of loans in this construction company in the Middle East, like they want to know, is it cool?
Right.
So all these other things, this politician said this politician said this, those people are working for, always follow the money. If they do anything too crazy, they're going to get a call from somebody at the bank and be like, hey, I know this is what you think, but this is actually what it is, because we got 380 billion tied up here, so y'all need to figure it out. You can cosplay like y'all are fighting or whatever on TV, but we need a resolution here. Or we're tired of this over here. This is where the money's. So, but I've also just being into those meetings and reading those quarterly reports and those annual outlooks to see like, man, people are really focused on this group and all these areas where my group, I'm just saying how we stack up against each other, and it's just not good. And it's just because like we don't know what we really should be focusing on. It's made me like empathetic to be like, you know what? A lot of people if they just had the tools, will make totally different decisions.
Yeah.
Will make totally different decisions. Like I could take a baby born to the worst possible conditions in Chicago on O Block, and I can drop them in the right zip code in Washington, D.C. or Virginia, where there's wealthy black areas, and that kid will flourish because what he has access to is different. The same kid from those same inner city circumstances, but just simply changes his environment where he has access to, like, oh, I should be focusing on this and not that. So it's changed me just in ways of being more empathetic and learning, like, once you give people, like, a tool, like, teaching a man to fish is a real thing. Giving people a tool to change their life, that's the greatest wealth, because no matter, like, if you build enough people, you can never be poor, because, like, we come from a kind of culture to where we have a reverence for people who have showed us mercy and grace. Like, that's why you love your grandma, your grandpa, your uncle, because they've given you resources and like told you things. You're like, I'm so indebted to them. And that's why I always say social capital is the biggest wealth, because if anything ever happens to me, I've helped so many people that they would all rally around me and be like, we got to make sure that he's okay. And so just learning to invest in people is how it's changed me the most.
Yeah, no, I love that. And yes, I agree, because you will, especially when you are in certain circumstances, that's when you are going to see the resources that you have available. Like you said, that social capital is a game changer. And even if you think, I don't, because there are many people who don't have supportive families or people that don't know, but they have someone that they lean. It may not be blood, right? It may be someone that they connected with, an old colleague that they still talk to, that is absolutely able to, they can reach out and say, I just want to pick your brain about this because I'm thinking about going in this direction. And they have a contact that you never knew about, right? Like it's always being able to reach back, and also living your life in a way. We talked about that on my Globee episode. So again, make sure y'all watch that. But living your life in a way that, like, when you're creating legacy, that's part of it. That you do have the social capital, that you do have people that you can reach out to. They don't have to have capital themselves, right? Like, it is what the resource could be advice. The resource could be an empathetic ear, right? Like, you need all of these things to be able to move forward. So yes, I absolutely love that. Awesome. Okay, so we are getting close to our time to the end of our time together. So we are at, my everyone knows this is my favorite part, carte blanche, and that is CARRTE. So this is where anything goes. So anything goes means that Dr. Carr gets to choose, and Dr. Carr has a question for Al of what keeps you grounded?
What keeps me grounded? Well, I'm a husband and a father of two, and I have two small kids. My oldest is about to turn 4, and my youngest is about to turn 8 months. So no matter what I accomplish in the world, they are perpetually unimpressed with me. And it actually works, because I'll have this really awesome day, and I'll come home, just play with my little kid, and it's like, they do not care. They're like, I don't care about any of that, Daddy. Like, who cares? Get me a Nutri-Grain bar. Kids are just like super honest. They're like, Daddy, like I don't your shirt drink or whatever. So having those two little ones who don't care about like early accomplishments, that helps keeps me grounded. And just following the work. And I really have a love for my people. I have a love for all people, but I have a passion for my people, because I've seen, our greatness as a group and seeing us stray from that in some ways and like knowing what we're capable of. I just want to be committed in making sure that like the narrative of us is like a people who overcome and have an endless possibility when we put our minds to anything. So just seeing the work and seeing like young people that I've seen at point A and now they're at point J or K, I'm like, man, like you have come such a long way. So that keeps me grounded. I follow the people who are doing good work to help me keep me grounded because there's always something to be done. And also, I participate heavily in my fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma, and so I get to go to a lot of places and doing some work where just seeing how blessed I am and how some other people are having those hard times. So just having those things, it's always making sure and realize that I'm here to learn to give. Like that's actually like I'm here on earth to learn how to give and to serve. So those are things that keep me grounded.
Yes, service is our contribution, y'all. Like this is why we're here. That is what we pay to continue to be here. It's our service, right? So awesome. Yes, this has been so great. Thank you again, Al. We appreciate you talking with us today, talking with me. This has been wonderful. And for all of y'all that are listening, of course, make sure that we have information on it. If you want to connect with Al, you can be able to do so. And after you're done, again, I told y'all there's episodes that connect to these conversations. Make sure you check those out. You can, find us on YouTube. Make sure that you are going over to KMOB1, and you can also check out the store over there because there's plenty of things that we've curated some goodies for y'all. So make sure you check that out. And don't forget to follow us on TikTok. There are over 750,000 people over there on TikTok worldwide for you to connect with and not only talk about the culture docent, but talk about the music that you're listening to. We have spoken word as well. So go check that out. All right, y'all. We will see you Tuesday for more empowering conversations that lead to empowered experiences. Thanks. Bye.
Shakar. We'll be back next Tuesday. Don't miss it. Questions or comments? Email tcd@thelkinstitute.com. And don't forget, check out our curated store at KMOB1003.com.